Welcome to the live DG
Yes.
Sachs, Derrick Griffin, Peter Hostrasser. It's cold, my man. It's a little cold today.
Hey, it's cold, but you know what? We've all had dreams, man. Shout out
Yep,
to Martin Luther King Jr. We all got a dream and we're all working towards something great still, regardless of the weather. But stay warm out there if you're in
yeah,
Chicago. Uh
100%.
man.
Heating it up though, by the way, I wanted to let our
Yeah.
viewers know here on LinkedIn. We also do run this live on the YouTube channel now. So it is on Disrupt Education YouTube channel. That's me, disrupteducation.co. You got this guy over here. It is dgsacks.com. Man, I got off a really good conversation this morning with somebody across the pond. I will not reveal her name because you have to listen to the podcast, but doing some amazing things, dude. And in education, mentioned the sandbox, mentioned design thinking, innovation, a lot of different areas where we are kind of lacking in a system. But as
Mhm.
musicians, as artists,
Yeah.
you just mentioned a little bit previously, right before we got on the live, is getting a bunch of people together and jamming and in a space like maybe a musical sandbox, if you will. Um,
Yeah.
give the people who hire amazing musicians like you a little bit of insight. Like when you get people together,
Yeah.
different instruments, different creatives in the music world.
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you just specifically try to better the songs that you have or that you usually do? Do you create new songs? Is it a combination? I'm gonna throw that one out at you today.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I think I'm gonna have to trademark that musical sandbox. That analogy right there is like spot on because you think about as a kid, like getting in the sandbox, you got the one kid that has the shovel, you've
Mhm.
got the other kid that's like just trying to put all the sand together, but it's so dry, it's not staying together because there's no moisture. So you got to add a little water to keep the foundation together. And so like it's kind of the same concept with music, right? I mean, you've got engineers, you've got producers, and then you've got instrumentalists who are a big complementary figure to that. And so I think that's where my lane comes into play. But also just being in that space, there's a lot of opportunity for inspiration too. I was at a studio downtown called Classic Studios. It's on the west side of Chicago. And what's really amazing is that you had a multitude of musicians in the room together. Being able to hear different ideas allows you to kind of develop a different type of ear as well, because I think what we tend to do sometimes as creators is, we can put ourselves in a box by just looking at things one way. But when you hear different perspectives and just different ideas flowing, it gets you thinking like, well, man, I could do that too. Or like, man, you know what? I never thought about approaching it in this manner. So I think for musicians, creators, we crave collaboration. We crave listeners and people that are going to receive it in a positive way, but also getting that honest feedback to figure out ways in which you can, improve on your craft and be a little bit more efficient and effective. Had a couple familiar faces in the room. Shout out to Antoine Billups from Oak Park. He's actually very active in production. He was a fellow saxophone player over at Oak Park River Forest High School at the time too, and he's gotten into production very heavily. Plays bass as well. So it was just great to hear these sounds, and it was just like a subtle reminder to me as a live performer. I've been very heavy on the live performing space in the last, 2 to 3 years. That it's important to balance the two. I feel because you have artists that aren't very comfortable being in that live space, and so me coming in, I kind of felt like a veteran. Like
Mhm.
I've been in the game for a while, and I was able to provide some inspiration and also just like just some word of advice, like just failing fast, like going out there, putting yourself out there, being vulnerable. I think there was a level of that in the rooms as well. So there was multiple like studio spaces, and it was probably like 20 to maybe 30 plus people in every single room. And we were all just listening, sharing ideas, sharing our social medias, and finding ways to connect organically. And I feel like that's something that a lot of cities and communities need more of,
Yeah.
especially in the performing arts space, because it's something that we need to continue to, keep going 100%. So,
Taking that sandbox to the live,
yeah.
one of my favorite movies, actually probably is my favorite movie of all time, is The Blues Brothers.
Nice.
Just
Yeah.
some amazing musicians, etc. in there.
Yeah.
And I remember when, and I actually just watched it the other day. It popped up on my Netflix or one of the streamings. But the when they go to the country music place and they
Yeah.
have to like basically, they go in to give me some lovin', and obviously it's not the right crowd, and they have to change real quick. I call
Right.
that, you crash the castle in the sandbox and you rebuild real quick.
Right.
Um, you know, in live, you can do that, right? Like you can quickly change over and do things like that, and you're like that. Well, I wanted to ask you, not that
Yeah.
you're in Bob's Country Bunker, which is what the place was called,
Yeah.
but when you're in the sandbox, are there times where you
Yeah.
guys are like, yo, let's try this, and then it's like, no, 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 this isn't going to work. Let's morph into the next idea, or just kind of like go into that creative pattern. Like, what does that look like when you bring somebody a bunch of people together?
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good question because you have like in session or in studio musicians who are very accustomed to, let me get another take. Let me take
Yep.
another take. Let me just record this three different ways and let's see how it sounds. When you're live, that is your take.
Yeah.
There's no do-overs. There's no, oh, I didn't play this note, the way I wanted to, or I didn't accent the note the way I expected to. It's in the moment, it's live, it's what you see is what you get. But it's the imperfections in live music that's what makes the performance come out, that I think is so great. And I was
Yep.
talking to one of my buddies, Mike. He goes by 8-Bit Mike on Instagram. He's a part of the DJ firm Off the Cuff Ensemble, plays keyboard, and he comes from a heavy like production background and like doing animation type theme songs, and very used to like using Logic Pro and Pro Tools and
Mhm.
all these different softwares that you can basically put different type of synthesizers and pianos and drums. And for him, it's like the live space, it gives him like a level of anxiety because he's not used to just like having to be on point at every moment. But I think what he's starting to realize is that the live space, there's some level of freedom there too. And it doesn't have to be like to the script, whereas if you're in a studio, you start on beat one, you're going to know that if you're not on beat one and something's not going to really line up correctly, and it's going to, something's going to be off. The drums are going to be off, and then the guitar is all the way over here to the left. So you got to make sure everything is really lined up. And I think he's so used to that mind frame of just being in the studio that he kind of had to separate himself from that and really focus on how to bring a different level of energy to the live space. So it's definitely two different spaces. And I think as musicians too, even for myself, like there's a level of like perfection that we always try to strive for.
Mhm.
Um, but I've also come to accept like being able to fail fast and just understanding that in those moments that you may come across some unique opportunities of not necessarily being right on the beat and like creating something different that you didn't quite expect because you were so used to just approaching it one way. So, yeah.
Yeah. So two things I'm going to take from this one, man. Number
Yeah.
number one is the difference between live and re-recording. That was huge. And
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
a lot of our listeners who are going to go with musicians should really understand the live musician, right? You want to be able to get people who are working into this. And I kind of tended to look at that as a professional musician rather than, this guy's good, let's just get this person, and maybe they're doing a bunch of other things. No
Yeah.
disrespect, there's great artists out there, but I think, the reason to go get a group or people who are professional musicians like yourself is because that's what you do. So in these off moments when we're freezing out here in the Chicago area, you
Yeah.
are in working for clients you don't even have yet, which I
Yes.
love to hear that. And, other people may just have other things going on.
Yes.
Again, no disrespect, but if you want the real deal, I would go with that. The other thing that I'm going to end on is really liking how education and the musical sandbox are very similar.
Yeah.
Playing around, getting outside the rigid, 1, 2, 3 sometimes, getting some
Yeah.
people together, and really kind of playing in that sandbox,
Yeah.
learning, excuse me, and failing, like failing
Yes.
forward.
Yeah.
there's a lot of ties here, and I think that's why we talk about this. So,
Absolutely.
um, if you all want a professional musician, the real, I like the real, dgsax.com. Reach out, take a look. You'll probably speak to Dan Bevan sometime. He is your manager, the guy who has all the keys to ready
Oh,
to get that bus started and going.
right.
I'm Peter Hostrasser, Disrupt Education. We talk about this on the podcast a lot. So not only are we creating in a sandbox in music, we're doing it in education. Hey, man, great live, man. Thank you.
Thank you always, man. Thank
All
you.
right, we'll see you guys later. Until next time.